What on earth did I just watch? Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, we have just seen the most chaotic, the craziest, and arguably the most scandalous game in the 2025 AFCON so far. Egypt 1, South Africa 0. This game was crazy. Absolute chaos throughout the whole entire game. From the starting lineups, the first half, the end of the second half, penalty calls disallowed, soft penalties given, red cards. This game was the most chaotic 1-0 game I've ever seen in my life. And if you just look at the scoreline, you would think that this wasn't the best game. Bro, if you watch this game, oh my days, this was a crazy, crazy game. Egypt 1, South Africa 0. Egypt have beaten South Africa. They've broken the curse and they've beaten South Africa for the first time since 2006. That's almost 20 years since the last time Egypt have beaten South Africa. And that's why, in my opinion, I predicted that South Africa were going to top this group, because I do think that both Egypt and South Africa are the two best teams in this group. But with Egypt not beating South Africa in so long, I thought that South Africa were definitely going to top this group. But at the moment, it looks like Egypt are the more likely team to finish in first place, as currently they sit on 6 points. South Africa sit on 3 points, and both Angola and Zimbabwe sit on 1 point. But let's get into this game. I'm losing my breath because this game was crazy. Everything in this game was absolutely insane. I'm going to start off by talking about the lineup, because honestly, South Africa in this game, man, I'm not sure what Hugo Broos was doing. This lineup was very, very strange to me, right? Obviously, Egypt are a very attacking team, right? Egypt's best part in their team is their attack. You look at players like Mahmoud, you look at players like Mo Salah, you look at players like Trezeguet in this game was phenomenal. So their attack is their main strength. And it seems like Hugo Broos put out a South African lineup that was going to try and defend, try and soak up pressure, and try and hit Egypt on the counterattack. But, bro, you started 3 defensive midfielders in the midfield. How are you supposed to do anything in the attack when you're playing with pretty much 7 defensive outfield players on the team? Sithole, Mokoena, and Mbatha are all defensive players. You're playing a defensive-minded player in the attacking midfield position. I thought this lineup was very, very strange. And in that first half, Egypt had more of the ball. They were attacking more often than South Africa were. And it seemed like Egypt were always going to be the team to score and possibly win this game, right? From that first half, Egypt were the more likely team to score. And there's a reason for that, because South Africa didn't put on enough attacking players. And obviously that's why at the start of the second half, he made a change, because their team was just way too defensive, right? South Africa aren't a defensive team, but in this game, they were just playing pure defense. So already from the starting lineup, you knew this was going to be a crazy, crazy game. But that first half was definitely more of South Africa. More of Egypt, sorry. If you look at the stats in the first half, yes, the possession was pretty similar, but you could always tell that Egypt were the more likely team to score. They had more possession. They had more possession in the final third over South Africa. Now, I will say South Africa defensively, they were pretty good, right? They were holding the ball good in the defense, as you'd expect, playing with 7 defensive players on the team, right? Like, obviously they're going to be decent defensively. But then at the end of the first half, Egypt get the penalty. Now, this is a very, very controversial call. If you were watching the game, you would see that the South African player hits the Egyptian player in the face. It's very controversial, because he's shielding the ball. His hand goes a little bit too high and kind of hits the Egyptian player in the face. In my opinion, I don't know if that should have been a penalty. I think there's cases that you can make for it to be a penalty and for it not to be a penalty. And in this case, the referee ended up giving it a penalty, right? But it was definitely soft. It was definitely a soft call. And I do feel like South Africa were a little bit hard done by in that first half. And obviously, Mo Salah taking a penalty, he was always going to score, right? Was it a good penalty? No. It was straight down the middle. It wasn't a hard shot. It wasn't a good penalty. If the keeper would have stayed in the middle He's getting an easy save, easily, right? But the penalty was given. Egypt go 1-0 up right before halftime. But then, more drama before halftime. Egyptian player gets a red card. Hani gets a second yellow, and he's sent off. This was so stupid of him. To put a tackle like that, is it a crazy, harsh tackle? No. But to put in a tackle like that right before halftime, you're already on a yellow card. It's just stupid. It's very stupid. It's not good enough. It's not good enough by Hani. He's an experienced player in this Egyptian back line. So for him to get a red card right before the halftime, it's just stupid. You're up 1-0. Just see the game, see the half through. Let the game get to halftime. Make sure you don't do anything stupid. He does something stupid, ends up getting the second yellow. Once again, should this have been a second yellow? It's controversial. It's very controversial. I think the referee maybe wanted to level the playing field a little bit. Obviously, he gave the penalty to Egypt. It was a little bit of a harsh call. I don't think it should have been a penalty, but because of that, he decided to give them the second yellow and make them go down to 10 men. I think more often than not, it probably would have been a warning. I don't think that should have been a second yellow, but anyway, that's the end of the first half. You saw a soft penalty given. You saw a harsh second yellow. Now Egypt are down to 10 men coming into the second half. And in the second half, this game completely switched. Look at the stats from the first half. 48% possession to 52. Very similar. I would say Egypt were just a better team. The second half was all South Africa. Egypt went full 100% defense mode. South Africa went full attacking mode. 74% possession for South Africa in the second half to 26% for Egypt. They had 17 shots. South Africa had 17 shots in the second half. 5 shots on target. Honestly, watching this game, South Africa should have scored 3 goals in that second half. That's how much better South Africa were than Egypt in the second half. And I was just expecting it to come. I was like, when is this goal going to come? Like, it's shot after shot after shot. The Egyptian goalkeeper is making save after save after save. The defenders are making block after block after block. It's like, it's 100% should have been 3-1 to South Africa. I will say that El Shanawi made some very good saves in this game. That second half was all him. 6 saves. He got faced 1 expected goal. Didn't let in any goal. So you can tell that he was definitely the most important player for Egypt in this game. But South Africa, man. This is a team that have good attackers, right? They have good attackers. Most players in their team played together in the South African League. They should have scored in this game. Look at that shot chart. Look at all these shots from South Africa. Look how many of them in the box. Look how many of them from very close range. They needed to finish their dinner. They had chance after chance after chance, and they couldn't finish it. And I will say, congratulations to Egypt, because in my opinion, I don't think they're the best team defensively, but in that second half, they went all out defense, and it worked out. It worked out. Defensively, they weren't bad. They're making saves, making blocks, and they ended up winning the game 1-0. But we have to talk about what happened in the last few minutes of the game. Oh my gosh. This was the most controversial part in this game. 100%. Because I think it was around the 86th minute, South Africa were on the attack. They had a shot. The Egyptian player slides to try and block the shot, and the shot hits him in the hand, right on the edge of the box. Originally, the original decision of the referee was to give a free kick on the edge of the box. He thought it did hit his hand, but it was outside the box, so he was going to give a free kick. Then there was a crazy long VAR review, which took about 6 minutes, from the 86th minute until the 92nd minute. They were still reviewing VAR. I was like, bro, what is going on? How is the VAR decision taking this long? And when you were watching it on the replay, it looked like a 100% handball. The Egyptian player goes to ground, slide tackles to try and block the shot. The shot was off. It wasn't towards the net. It was a little bit off to the side. And it hits his hand in the box. 100% a penalty. All the fans, everyone is thinking that's 100% a penalty. But they don't call it. The referee goes to the VAR screen, looks at the challenge, and decides that he's not going to give a penalty. This was extremely controversial, probably the most controversial call in this game, and probably the most controversial call so far in this AFCON, because realistically, 95% of people would say that that is 100% a penalty. And then after the game, we're hearing this rule of if someone goes to ground and their hand is on the ground before the ball hits their hand, then it's considered a natural position. If they're sliding to the ground and their hand is still in the air, their arm is still in the air, and the ball hits their arm, then it's not a natural position. But if their arm is on the ground when they go for the tackle, then it's considered a natural position. I'm like, bro, what? That doesn't even make sense. First of all, that doesn't make sense. Second of all, it was extremely close whether his arm was still in the air or on the ground, but it's a clear hit of the arm of the Egyptian defender. It changes the trajectory of the ball, which makes it even more of a reason why it should be a penalty. And then they're coming up with this rule that if their hand's already on the ground, then it's not a penalty. I'm like, bro, I do not understand what's going on. I do not understand that rule. And no one knew that rule before this game. That's a thing with some of these very controversial calls in football, whether it's in the Premier League, whether it's in another league, whether it's in the AFCON now. When they have these controversial calls, every time after the game, they come out with these rules saying, oh, because of this, it's not a penalty. Bro, any day of the week, that's a penalty. South Africa were 100% hard done by this referee, in my opinion. I think the first penalty on Egypt was soft. Yes, the red card was also soft, but this penalty had to be given. Honestly, at this point, if that's the rule, it's a flawed rule because it clearly 100% hits his arm. His arm is far out from his body and it changes the trajectory of the ball, right? There's certain times where, yes, it may be the rule, but this is obvious. This is obvious, an obvious handball. And I think South Africa should have got a penalty. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe y'all would disagree with me. But in my opinion, I think South Africa should have got a penalty. I think this game should have ended at least 1-1. And I think this is the most controversial game so far in this AFCON. Everything from penalty decisions, from disallowed penalties to red cards. This game was absolutely wild. But it finished 1-0 to Egypt. And I will say, congratulations to Egypt. They defended well. They scored that penalty at the end of the first half. And they were down to 10 men. And realistically, South Africa should have scored 3 goals, but they didn't. And yes, they were unlucky not to get a penalty, but they should have won this game. So I think this game is to be blamed on South Africa not being able to score. I think if you want to blame anything, yes, you can blame VAR, you can blame bad decisions, but South Africa should have won this game. And the fact that they didn't is because they couldn't finish their chances. And that's on them. That's on them, right? If they would have scored multiple goals, it wouldn't matter if that penalty was given or not because they would have won this game. So in my opinion, yes, it was very, very controversial. And in my opinion, a bad call. But South Africa weren't good enough in this game in the attack and they should have won. But that's the end of this video. This game was absolutely crazy. Definitely the most chaotic, crazy 1-0 game I've ever seen in my life. I don't think I've ever seen such a low scoring game that was this crazy and that had this much controversy in such a major competition like the AFCON. But that's the end of the video. I think I'm also going to make a review on the game tomorrow between Senegal and DR Congo. So if you're excited for that, remember to leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and stay tuned for more videos.